you just said, monasteries have saved Western civilization times like multiple
Yeah.
times. They've invented hospital systems, education systems, apparently beekeeping. I didn't know that. Great cheeses, great beer. Some of the best
Yeah.
cocktail ingredients that we have, caring for the poor. And the reason I say this, Isaac, is because I don't enjoy the sort of habit talk for self-optimization or being
Hmm.
the sort of like inner Superman or like just being able
Yeah.
to life hack your way to success and happiness. I don't think that's what any of this is about, actually. I
Hmm.
think, like the monasteries, that our life is supposed to be turned outward for the love of other things.
Yeah.
Love of God and neighbor is what Jesus would have described life as being about. And
Yeah.
I like the life of habit as a way to get my gaze out of my internal life and into the world. So whether it's like a
Yeah.
habit of turning my phone off for an hour every evening so I'm actually present with my kids instead of
Yeah.
just navel gazing on my phone,
Yeah.
or something else like meditating so that I have headspace. To me, it's not about self-optimization. It's about loving the people around me, being present to the world, doing good work. And
Yeah.
that's where the monasteries actually become really important as the paradigm for that.
Yeah. And I think, who was it? Was it the Protestants or someone was saying that, or the reformers, that the new monastery is the family or the household. And so, like, I don't know who, might be a butchering of the quote, but I feel like I've read that somewhere. Well, it might have been
Yeah.
in your book. But the family household is where this plays out now. Because most people aren't choosing the monk lifestyle anymore, but we can set up the same sort of hub that is attractive and healthy and allows for hospitality and creativity and for
That's
impact on the
right.
world.
I think people from the Catholic tradition to Reformed and Anglican traditions actually, they all float this idea. I think it originated in Catholicism, but the household is the school of love. Basically
Yeah.
saying that the most important spiritual things you're going to learn in life aren't actually at church. They're in the school of the family because it
Yeah.
functions as a monastery and because you sync habits, you teach
Yeah.
things that you didn't intend to teach just because you're living in formative rhythms. And the whole
Yeah.
point of the habits of the household is to say if so much significant work is happening there under the radar, we might want to open the hood and look at the radar.
What is guiding us?
Like
Yeah.
what is happening there? And that was
Yeah.
born out of my own crisis of realizing like I was a guy who was writing a book about technology and work rhythms, but
Yeah.
yelling at my kids on the regular every evening. And I was like, okay, I'm
This isn't
feeling
working out.
uncomfortable irony here. Like my life of habit in the family was not a school of love; it was a school of frustration.
Yeah. And
So,
so how would
yeah.
how would you say, like, as a dad, what's the role of the father in, like, establishing that rule in the household? And there's so many different ways to fall off the horse as a father, of like either being a dictator or being too permissive.
Yeah.
Or like, how does a dad start that journey into like establishing a rule in
Yeah.
their household?
I think the big thing, and maybe this can be that moment for some people, is just waking up to it first.
Sure.
My wake up moment was one evening in my house where I had just written the book I was talking about, and I was putting my boys to bed, like managing them from the bathtub to pajamas to the bed. And I had 3 boys at the time. My wife was pregnant
Yeah.
with our 4th. I have 4 now.
Yeah.
And it was just classic, little boy, little kid stuff of like bathwater all over the floor, and people were running away from the bath naked, and I was wrestling them into pajamas and starting to make bodily threats if they don't do the things right.
Yeah.
And I popped off and like just started yelling them to bed, and then like said a quick prayer for them about how God loves them and I do too. And when I shut the door, the irony that everybody feels when I tell that story, I sort of felt for the first time. I was like,
Yeah.
wait,
Oh no.
both
Yeah.
of these things are super normal, that I yell them and threaten them into bedtime, and that I tell them that I love them and God does too. And the gap between what I say and what I do standing in the hallway that evening
Yeah.
was just so painfully apparent. And that's where this whole thing began for me. So I think the
Yeah.
first thing that a dad should do is to be brutally honest with yourself. Like, what is
Yeah.
it like if you're really brave, and ask your wife.
Yeah.
I don't know that you'll get a good answer for your kids, but you can you can play this episode for your wife and say,
Yeah.
what does it feel like to live with me? And brace yourself, right?
But make a cup of tea and get ready to hang out. Yeah.
The good news about this is that answer is always going to hurt, but that's great. Like, if you're smart, you know that everything good in life hurts. Like, if you're going to get stronger, you need to break down your muscles. If you're going to persevere in anything, you're going to have to persevere through that awkward moment. And from there, I think it's saying, what is the normal for me? And so for me, and probably a lot of people listening, it was the angry, sort of like prone to yell, prone to snap. Just that sort of like cloud of anger over the house.
Right.
And I realized my like resting presence with my children was not one of gentleness. It was one of sort of like brooding, and yours might be passivity. Like your presence is more like this is annoying, so I'm going to withdraw.
Yeah.
And not address anything and sort of not be present. And there's probably lots of gradations between those two things.
Sure.
But figuring out what your normal reactions are, and then saying, okay, what are the habits that I could start to put in place to bring me towards being a gentle, loving presence with my kids? Because whatever your ideology is, figuring out how to be a dad who is there, present, and not angry when they are there, is basically 90% of the battle. Like, it's the mental health outcomes for your kids, the physical outcomes for your kids, the spiritual outcomes for your kids. Everything changes when you are there and gentle. It doesn't mean not authoritative. That doesn't mean not strong. That just means not blowing up on them all the time. So figure, those are my two steps,